I'll be sewing the kimono romper with pockets on the front. I'm cutting out the 12 to 18 month size, starting with the front and the back, and those are both cut on the fold. So I'm going to have to fold my fabric over, place the piece right along the fold line where it's marked here, and then cut it out. And there's a notch on this pattern that you have to remember to clip into both layers. And that's my back piece. Now do the same for the front. There's my front cut out. I'm going to do the round pocket. So you need to cut 2 of these. I'll just fold my fabric over and cut through 2 layers. If you're going to be doing snaps at the inseam, you'll cut 3 of these facings on the fold. If you're not, just don't cut any. For the drawstring casing that you'll be sewing on the inside, there is a pattern piece. If you don't want to print the pattern piece, it is 3/4 of an inch tall, and then it's as wide as the waist of the romper. And the grain line doesn't matter on this piece. So I just cut it wherever it's convenient on my fabric. And then just the neckband. The neckband will work better if the fabric's a little bit stretchier. But I'm going to make it work with this fabric because I don't have a really good complementing color. If you're doing the snap inseam, you'll also have to cut 2 pieces of interfacing with the same pattern piece on the fold. I'm using a knit iron-on interfacing here. With all the pieces cut out, I'm going to start now by ironing the interfacing onto 2 different facing pieces. Now to put the drawstring casing on, we're going to place it on the inside of the fabric, matching it up to those notches that you clipped here, and pinning it in place. Now I'm just going to sew right along the edge of the bottom and the top. So you're going to want your bobbin thread to match the fabric as well as you can, because that's going to be the one showing on the front. So I'm using a straight stitch and I'm just sewing right along the edge, leaving maybe a 1/16 of an inch. And then going along the top now as well. And the same exact thing for the other half. Now if you're putting pockets on, this is when you'll sew them onto the front. We're just doing a single layer of pockets, and I'll be placing them maybe an inch down from this bottom seam for the drawstring casing, and then about 2 inches, an inch to 2 inches from the side seam. And then you'll pin those in place. Now with the pockets pinned in place, I'm going to sew around them with a straight stitch about 1/4 of an inch away from the side. And just move straight on to the next pocket. Now with the facings, I'm going to sew one that is interfaced with the one that I did not interface. So this doesn't have any interfacing on it. And I'm going to layer those together with the right sides facing each other. And I'm going to sew them together right along this outer curve at maybe 1/16 of an inch again. With those 2 layers sewn together, I'll turn them right side out and then iron that so it's flat. After that's ironed flat, I'm going to sew this double layered one onto the back inseam. So make sure you have your back piece, and you'll lay this against the inseam so all the raw edges are going to be together here. And you can pin it in place if you want. I'm just going to serge it to the inseam now. Now that's the back snap placket. For the front one, I'm going to serge along the outer edge. This one doesn't have any, this doesn't have 2 layers. It's just to give it a more finished look, or if you want to sew along it after you sew it to the front. So now with the front inseam, you'll line it up again the same way, except make sure that it's face down. So you'll be seeing the interfacing here. And serge it to the inseam. Now I'm going to fold this one inside and do a straight stitch along the seam to hold it towards the inside. Okay, now that's sewn down so it's flat toward the inside, as you can see. You can sew along that serged seam about 1 inch in if you'd like. I'm just going to leave it there though. And for the back facing, you'll fold that serged seam toward the inside and then stitch right on top of it. You're not going to be sewing this facing down to the outfit. Okay, and so that's what it should look like after. I'm matching the front and the back layers now with the right sides of the fabric together, so I can serge down the side seams, and I'm going to serge one of the shoulders closed. And then either shoulder works, just sew one of them closed. With the neckband, fold it in half and find the center. Clip a little notch to mark it. Now on the neck, fold it line it up so you'll find the center of that as well. And it's not going to be right on the shoulder seam, it'll be toward the front neck since it scoops lower. About right there. So with the neckband folded in half, you'll match the center notch with this notch you just clipped on the neck. And pin it in place. Then you will pin this end to this shoulder. And then this end to the other shoulder. Just like that. And now you're going to have to stretch the neckband to fit the neck and serge it on. After the neckband is sewn on, we will match the other shoulder together. And with these seams pointed in, I'm going to serge it together. Now I'm going to turn it right side out. And on this neckband here where you sewed it together, I'm going to fold that serged seam inside and fold the seam toward the neck and sew a straight stitch there to hold it flat. From the inside of the outfit, at the casing, I'm going to clip a little hole right beside each side seam so you can thread that drawstring all the way through. And just make sure you clip that casing and not the actual outfit. That's one side and the other. Okay. Now for the hems. For the sleeves, I like to roll them and sew them like this. And then just do a straight stitch there to secure it. You can leave it raw and sew these seams to the side, or you can fold it in like this and hem it if you prefer that look. But I'm just going to roll it and sew it. Now for the bottom hems, you can do the same thing. You can roll it, which I don't really recommend because it gets a little bulky here. You can fold it up and hem it from the top, or what I like to do is use a double needle, or you can use a zigzag stitch and just sew straight across. It's going to leave it raw, but it will still look finished, and it'll curl up a little bit, and so it'll match the rolled sleeve hem. When I do that though, I need to cut the seam allowance off, so I'm going to cut 3/4 of an inch off of the hem so that it's the right length. Now I'm using my double needle for the leg hem. The double needle is just like a regular needle. You put it in your sewing machine, except you thread 2 threads through the top and then feed them through the individual needles. And you'll still use a straight stitch, so it's really easy. And if you have a cover stitch, of course, use that instead of the double needle. And I'm just going to sew straight across the hem, making sure this stays folded in and this does not get folded in, at maybe 1/4 of an inch. For the drawstring, I'm going to use the same fabric. I'm just going to cut an inch wide piece of fabric. And you can use whatever you want for the drawstring. To put the drawstring in, you'll clip 2 small holes right at the center, about 1.5 to 1 inch apart. And make sure you only cut through the first layer of fabric. Then I'm going to place a safety pin on the end of this drawstring. And thread it through. And you'll go through those holes you cut in the side seam here to get to the other side. I like to knot the ends of the drawstring so it looks a little bit more finished. For the snaps now, I'm going to set the male half first, and that's going to be on the back inseam. So this extra facing here is where all the snaps are going to go. So to set the first one, I'm going to find the center and place the open ring on the inside so that the male half will be on this outside edge and it'll get fastened like that. After that center one's set, I'm going to set the 2 on the bottom hem, just a touch above or right at that seam. And for the last ones, match the bottom and the middle one to find the center to set your other snap here. Do the same thing for the other side. It should look like this when you fold that facing in. You'll see all these snaps here, and then you'll see the open rings on the inside. Now for the female halves, find the center again to set your first one. And this time the open ring will be on the outside of the fabric. Then snap that to the male one to find the placement for your other snaps. So you'll be able to feel it through that fabric and put an open ring right where you can feel it. When it's done, it should look like this. And when you wash it and wear it, these edges will curl. Same with the pocket edges. And it'll look a little bit more like it's intended.